I remember the lights first. Soft gold lights hanging above the rooftop. They looked warm, but the air around me still felt cold. My graduation party took place in one of my parents' hotels. They rented the entire rooftop so the guests could congratulate them for producing another educated daughter. That was how it always felt. Their success, their achievement, their image, not mine. I stood near the railing and watched people walk around with champagne glasses. I kept a smile on my face because I knew people were watching. Every move I made had to fit the version of me my parents created. Polite, quiet, useful, decorative, never loud, never important. My mother told me earlier that evening to stand straight and avoid slouching. She said I needed to look confident. She said confidence would attract better connections. She meant business partners, investors, contacts who cared only about the company. I nodded and stayed quiet. That was the safest choice with her. My father moved between groups of guests while shaking hands and laughing. He always controlled the room. He spoke with authority. He treated every space like a meeting he intended to dominate. When he looked at me, he gave a small nod, the kind that meant he approved of my behavior so far. His nods came with rules. I had learned them all since I was a child. Ava stood near the bar with a few of her friends. She talked fast and laughed loud. People liked her. People always liked her. She made everything look natural. I never hated her for it. She grew up being encouraged to shine. I grew up being told to stay balanced and quiet. We were shaped in different ways by the same parents. The music played at a low volume. The sky slowly turned dark. Guests arrived from every direction, carrying smiles and small compliments. I thanked them even when their words felt empty. I did it because I knew my parents wanted me to. This party was not for me. It was a statement, a stage, a reminder to everyone that they built something perfect. They never noticed the cracks. During my degree, I found those cracks. I found them in the company reports that did not match. I found them in the factory inspections that ended too early. I found them in the waterways that changed color near disposal sites. I found them in the testimonies of the workers who trusted me more than they trusted any official. I studied environmental science because something inside me needed honesty, real truth, real data, real impact. My parents hated that choice. They said no serious person studied a field with low financial return. They said I would never earn enough. They said I would become dependent. They said the world did not need more emotional graduates. I stayed firm. It was the only decision I ever made without bending. My father tightened his grip on me after that. He asked more questions. He watched me closely. He kept track of my classes and my assignments. He expected updates. He acted interested, but I knew his interest came from fear. He worried about what I might discover. He worried about what I might say. When I turned 21, his fear shifted into action. That year, my trust fund would unlock soon. The trust gave me voting rights in the company. It gave me freedom from them. It gave me power they never wanted me to have. 3 months before graduation, I visited home. I still remember the silence in the hallway that night. I walked toward my old room and heard my name coming from my father's office. The door stood slightly open. His voice sounded calm. My mother sounded tense. They talked about protecting the company from a possible threat. They described me as the threat. They said I asked dangerous questions. They said I wanted to expose something. They said my degree gave me too much access to information. My father said I needed to be slowed down, not hurt in a visible way, not harmed in a way that left clear marks, just slowed, just incapacitated, just enough to delay my role in the trust. My mother asked if it was safe. My father said it was controlled and tested. He said the compound was mild in small doses. He said it caused temporary neurological issues, confusion, weakness, hospitalization, nothing immediate, nothing obvious, something doctors would call unexplained. I stood in the hallway and felt my chest stop moving. I waited for my breath to return. When it did, I walked to my room without making a sound. I packed my things and left early the next morning. From that moment, I prepared. I organized files. I cataloged every piece of evidence. I reached out to investigators who worked quietly. I shared information with two of my closest friends from university. They helped me structure timelines and secure backups. They helped me plan the moment when I would reveal everything. I wanted to expose the truth. I also wanted to survive. When the night of my graduation party arrived, my hands felt steady. My mind felt clear. I stayed close to my friends and watched my parents from a distance. I tried to predict their movements. I waited for anything suspicious. It happened fast. My father walked toward the drinks table. He did not look around much because he felt confident. He reached into his jacket. He pulled out a small packet. He opened a champagne glass that had a small card beside it. My initials. He sprinkled a fine white powder into the drink and stirred it before placing the glass back on the tray. He stepped away with the same calm look he used in every negotiation. My heart did not race. It slowed. A server picked up the tray. He walked toward me. I saw the glass with my initials. I saw the powder dissolve. I saw my father glance in my direction with a tiny smile. My life was supposed to end quietly. The tray reached me. I moved one hand, 1 second, one small motion. I swapped the glass with the one next to it. The server did not notice. No one noticed. I held the safe glass. Ava walked toward me. She reached for a drink while talking to her friends. She grabbed the glass with my initials. She lifted it and laughed. She drank it without looking. I watched the swallow. I watched everything around me sharpen. The lights, the sounds, the weight of the night. Ava finished half the glass before she lowered it. Her smile slipped for a second. She rubbed her forehead and blinked a few times. She tried to keep talking, but her voice sounded flatter. One of her friends asked if she felt all right. She laughed it off and said she probably drank too fast. She tried to act normal. I watched the confusion settle in her eyes. I watched her focus shift. Her body moved differently. Her steps became heavy. She reached for the railing to steady herself. She thought it was just dizziness. She thought it was harmless. She had no reason to imagine anything darker. My father stood across the rooftop. He watched her. He looked at the glass in her hand. His jaw tightened. His face lost its color. In that moment, he knew exactly what happened. He understood the mistake he made. He understood the choice I made. My mother's face twisted when she followed his line of sight. Her fear was louder than her voice. They could not run to her. They could not show panic. They were too practiced in public appearances. They whispered to each other with stiff bodies. They looked like statues pretending to be calm. Ava tried to stand straight, but her knees buckled. Her friends caught her before she hit the ground. She said she felt sick. She said something felt wrong. Her voice shook. She tried to breathe slowly, but her breaths became shallow. The party shifted. People turned toward the sound. The music continued, but the room no longer cared. The laughter stopped. Guests stepped aside as Ava collapsed to her hands and knees. She coughed. She said her chest felt strange. She looked up at me for 1 second. Her eyes showed fear, real fear. It was the first time I saw that expression on her face. My mother dropped her wine glass and ran across the rooftop. She screamed Ava's name. My father followed her, telling people to step away. His voice cracked even though he tried to keep it firm. He told someone to call an ambulance. His hands trembled as he touched Ava's shoulder. He kept saying it was an allergic reaction. He said it loudly, like volume could make it true. I did not move at first. I felt frozen, but not from shock. From clarity. I knew the truth. I knew what they meant to do to me. I knew Ava became the one who suffered because she trusted them. Because she trusted me. I felt my chest tighten, but I would not let myself break down there. Not in front of them. Not in front of the people who believed my family was perfect. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They lifted Ava onto a stretcher. Her arms hung loose. Her head fell to the side. My mother cried so loudly that it echoed across the rooftop. My father told the paramedics to take her to the private hospital his company funded. They ignored him and took her to the closest facility. They did not want to risk time. My parents climbed into the ambulance. The doors closed. The sirens started. The rooftop turned silent. The guests whispered among themselves. Some thought Ava fainted from stress. Some thought she drank too fast. No one imagined poison. They had no reason to. They did not know the people behind the elegant clothes and warm smiles. When the ambulance left, I stepped away from the crowd. I walked to a corner where no one stood. My hands shook for a few seconds. I forced them to stop. Then I pulled out my phone and opened a secure chat. It has started. That was the message I sent to my 2 closest friends. They responded immediately. No questions. No panic. They already knew the plan. They activated the file release. Years of evidence. Documents. Photos. Emails. Whistleblower statements. All uploaded to multiple secure locations. My father always said nothing could touch him. He said money and power protected him. He said influence shaped outcomes. He said consequences were for people who lacked resources. He was wrong. I left the rooftop while people still talked about Ava. I walked straight into the night and headed to the police station. I rehearsed the words in my mind, but they still felt heavy. At the front desk, I told the officer my name. I told him I wanted to report an attempted poisoning. I told him it involved my father. I told him the victim was my sister. I told him the drink meant for me was switched. He looked shocked for a moment, then serious. He took me to a private room. I handed him a drive with organized evidence. I explained the compounds my father's facilities produced. I explained the type of powder used in the drink. I explained my parents' motive. I described the conversation I overheard months earlier. Every detail, every thread, every connection. The officer called investigators. More officers joined us. They asked clear questions. I answered each one with the same calm tone because if I broke, they might doubt me. I kept my voice level. I kept my breathing steady. Around midnight, they received a call from the hospital. Ava was stable but unconscious. Doctors found chemical traces in her blood that did not match anything typical. The investigators glanced at each other. They understood the seriousness. They asked if my parents had medical or chemical connections. I said yes. They owned the connections. I said they controlled disposal sites. I said they controlled shipments. I said they controlled their workers through fear. Every piece of evidence in the drive supported that. By morning, the investigators arrived at the hospital. They questioned my parents. The answers did not match. My father blamed faulty champagne storage. My mother tried to accuse the bartender. They contradicted each other in the first 10 minutes. When investigators accessed their phones and emails, everything shifted. They saw messages that hinted at controlling my trust fund timeline. They saw scheduling notes that matched the day of the party. They saw contacts linked to the compound. At 7 in the morning, they placed my parents in handcuffs. My father kept his face blank, but his eyes showed something I had never seen. Not anger, not disappointment, something closer to disbelief. He always believed he controlled every outcome. He never imagined I could take control back. My mother cried and begged for understanding. She said she did not know what was happening. She said she wanted her daughter safe. Her voice echoed with panic, not guilt. They were taken away while reporters gathered outside the hospital. Cameras flashed. Journalists shouted questions. Their perfect image broke in less than a minute. I walked into Ava's room 2 days later. She opened her eyes slowly. Her voice sounded weak. She asked what happened. She asked why our parents were gone. She asked why police officers visited her. I sat beside her and told her everything. I spoke quietly. I did not hide anything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached out and held my hand. She said she believed me. She said she should have noticed something was wrong in our family. She said she wanted to leave the city and start over. I told her I wanted the same. Ava left the hospital after a week. She moved slowly, but she improved every day. The doctors said she would recover fully with time. When she stepped outside for the first time, she looked around like she had never seen the world before. She breathed deeper. She blinked against the sunlight. She held my arm while we walked to the car. We did not return to our parents' house. We did not return to the city center. We drove to a small lake house 2 hours away. It belonged to a former professor who trusted me. He offered it without hesitation when he heard the situation. The air around the lake felt softer. The world felt quiet. The water stayed still most days, which gave Ava something calm to look at while she healed. The first morning at the lake house, Ava sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. She watched the light move across the water. She said she never realized how loud our old life was until she stepped away from it. She said every memory felt sharp. She said she finally understood how much pressure sat on her shoulders without her noticing. I told her I understood. I told her I lived under a different kind of pressure, the kind that made me feel invisible, the kind that made me walk carefully around every conversation, the kind that made me hide my real work and my real thoughts. Ava listened and nodded. She said she wished she had seen it sooner. I told her it was not her job to notice everything. We were raised to stay in our assigned roles. The investigation moved quickly. Reporters surrounded the courthouse. Environmental lawyers stepped forward with evidence from communities affected by the company. Former employees came out with stories. Everything started connecting. Everything pointed to a long history of wrongdoing. My parents had spent years hiding violations. They used money to avoid consequences. They used people to protect profits. Now every secret surfaced at once. I watched the coverage on a small television in the lake house. I did not feel triumph. I did not feel victorious. I felt a long exhale that had been stuck inside me for years. The truth came out and stayed out. Nothing they did could hide it again. Ava struggled to process everything. She asked me why our parents made those choices. I told her the truth. They cared about power more than anything. They valued control. They valued reputation. They viewed every person as a tool, even their own daughters. She took a long time to respond. When she did, she said she did not want to become like them. She said she wanted something different, something clean, something honest. She started looking at law programs online. She said she wanted to work in advocacy. She wanted to help families who grew up in environments like ours. She wanted to stand in courtrooms and argue for people who had no voice. I watched her talk about her future with steady confidence. It reminded me of who she could have become if our parents had not shaped her through pressure and praise. Meanwhile, I joined a small environmental group near the lake. They worked on restoring polluted areas and cleaning wetlands. They focused on action rather than speeches. They welcomed me without hesitation. They saw me as someone useful, not someone ornamental. I felt comfortable there. I felt needed. Every day brought tasks that mattered. Collecting samples, removing waste, teaching volunteers. There was no pretending, no staged appearances, no forced smiles. Sometimes Ava asked if I regretted anything. I took my time before I answered. I told her I regretted that she suffered. I regretted that she trusted our parents for so long. I regretted that she paid for their choices, but I did not regret protecting myself. If I had not acted, I would have been the one in the hospital. I would have been the one who lost weeks or months. I would have been the one they silenced. She told me she understood. She said she did not blame me. She blamed the people who made the plan, the people who chose to hurt their own daughter to protect their power. We sat together many nights by the water. The surface reflected the moonlight. Ava rested her head on her knees and asked if I thought our lives would ever feel normal. I told her normal would not come quickly. It would take work. It would take time. It would take new choices. But it would come. The charges against our parents grew. Attempted poisoning, conspiracy, environmental violations, fraud, tampering with disposal records, leaks of hazardous waste. Each new report brought more information. Their empire collapsed one piece at a time. Investors abandoned them. Partners cut ties. Board members resigned. Everything they built relied on secrecy. Once the secrecy was gone, everything fell. I did not attend the hearings. I did not need to. The evidence spoke without me. The people they harmed spoke. The communities spoke. The workers spoke. My father looked smaller in every photograph. My mother looked exhausted. They no longer carried the confidence they once were everywhere. Ava asked if I hated them. I told her no. Hate required energy. I had given them enough of my life. I chose release instead. I chose distance. I chose a new beginning without them. One evening, Ava sat beside me on the porch. She asked if I remembered the moment at the rooftop when I switched the glass. I told her I remembered everything. She asked if I felt scared. I told her yes. I was terrified, but I also felt clear. I knew what they planned for me. I knew what they hoped would happen. I made the only decision that kept me alive. She looked at the lake for a long time. Then she whispered that she was glad I survived. I felt my chest loosen. It was the first time in years that someone in my family said something without hidden intent. Life at the lake house became simple. Quiet mornings, long walks, honest conversations, small steps toward new futures. We did not speak about the past every day. We let it settle in the background like a closed door we no longer needed to open. Sometimes I thought about the rooftop, the lights, the music, the moment my father slipped the powder into my glass. I stood smiling because I already understood something he never learned. Power built on lies always cracks. Control built through fear always collapses. Secrets always surface. I stepped out of that life with my own decisions, my own voice, my own proof. I walked into a future where I did not need permission to exist. I walked into a life that belonged to me, and I never looked back.